All right, guys, as I'm sure many of you guys know, the final chapter of Attack on Titan was finally released on Friday, I believe, the 9th. We've seen a lot of different takes on the anime or on the manga, the final chapter, but I think the vast majority of the people, at least on Reddit, which arguably is a pretty degenerate place, is pretty negative, and I think it's safe to say that a lot of people are giving the ending a lot of crap. But we're here to just kind of shed some light on why we think it's not as bad as they're making it out to seem.
Yeah. Uh, there are some people saying that this ruins the series, all of these like years of character development for Eren is thrown away. Isayama like totally dropped the ball here. While I think both of us don't think the ending is like the best part of the series or even particularly great, I do think that the general response is too far.
Yeah, definitely. And as usual, big disclaimer at the beginning, major spoilers for the final chapter and possibly other stuff that we'll be talking about for Attack on Titan. So beware, if you don't want to do that, leave. I don't even know why you clicked on the video. But yeah. With that being said, we'll just get right into it, I guess.
Yeah.
So, of the things we're going to cover today, this is the one that I think is the most okay for people to kind of bash on. It's revealed in this chapter that all along Ymir was in love with Karl Fritz, and that's the reason for these 2,000 some years she's been obeying the will of the royal family. And while I agree that this was kind of not too foreshadowed, really, I don't think it's too much of an out there concept that he went with for us to necessarily for it to justify us bashing as much as I've seen, you know?
hmm Yeah. So I do think that, maybe there could have been more foreshadowing for this or more clues throughout. But I do think that this does bring up like a good like comparison or just an interesting concept of freedom because I think that Aaron sees the world as like very black and white um, in terms of like what is free and what is not.
Mm.
Like, and if you're not free, you shouldn't be happy, and like you should have all negative feelings towards things that don't make you free, and you should have all positive things toward top positive feelings towards things that make you free. But Ymir is in this contradictory place where she loved Carl Fritz, even though he was her enslaver pretty much. And so I think that like what this sets up then, and we see on in the same set of panels, Eren was not really the Ymir parallel. It was Mikasa who was the Ymir parallel. Yeah, so I think that this revelation does good to make it clear like what the parallels here really are.
Yeah, I completely agree.
It's the result of Eren or result of Mikasa's choice, as so Eren says. And I think that this part maybe there's some reason to not like that it was like the result of Mikasa's choices at the end. A lot of people felt that like Eren was the one who really sacrificed and that like it should sort of be the result of his choices that end the Titans. But I think like truly Eren did see things as too black and white. And like, yeah, I don't think we need to get into the specific like morality of these characters, but at least thematically, we've been pounded and pounded with the theme that like it's not so black and white, good versus evil. And even though Eren seems to have like started to understand that, he still went through with the rumbling plan. And I think that thematically that choice can't get rewarded.
Yeah, definitely. And also on this note, something that a lot of people were talking about was there was a lot of confusion as to why Mikasa was the savior. And I think Isayama was clearly trying to show that Mikasa is the parallel to Ymir, as you said earlier. And she had gone through the same thing, Ymir loving Karl Fritz and Mikasa loving Eren. And Eren helped Mikasa break away from those shackles, metaphorical shackles. And eventually she was able to be free and eventually kill him, which something Ymir wasn't able to do. And that also kind of explains why she was smiling in the last episode. So I think it's pretty clear why Mikasa ended up saving Ymir and ultimately ending Titans. But I do think that Aaron did play a major role in it, you know. But at the end of the day, she's the one that made the decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the next major part I've been seeing memed on a lot is the fact that Aaron killed his mom. And I think that it is like, I mean, it leads to some funny memes, yeah, but when you look at it in the context of the story, it does kind of show that Aaron needed something to spark his motivation to lead him to his eventual goal, or what he thought his goal was. And leading the Dina Titan to kill his mom kind of sparked that hatred within him. And we've seen throughout the show, and I'm assuming the manga, I haven't read the early panels, we see Aaron think back to that scene a lot, and it kind of gives him motivation to carry on. The next thing that people would probably say to that point is the fact that Aaron's all about saving his loved ones and he would never hurt any of them. But he's shown in the past that he's willing to hurt some loved ones to save them later on. I mean, he ate his dad. He forced his dad to kill those children. He beat up Armin. He called. He said he hated Mikasa for. He said he's always hated her. So I think it's not out of character for him to do this, and I do think that it kind of makes sense as to like we can see what he was thinking in doing this.
Yeah, I think this panel, like I think that it's fine. I think it makes sense. Like I think the most legitimate criticism about this is that maybe Attack on Titan is a little bit unclear with its time travel rules, but like, yeah, I feel pretty fine about this panel.
Yeah,
Yeah, and a lot of people, or I think that this is just sort of a muddled point within this chapter. Like Aaron's intentions on killing humanity versus like what he knows will happen. So I think that based on these panels and also some panels later where Aaron says what he would have done, Aaron always wanted to do the rumbling just like he said. He wanted to kill um, all of humanity outside of the Paradise. And like he knows that he wasn't going to do that because he's able to see the future. There's Attack Titan powers. So I don't think that this is like the Code Geass Lelouch ending where like yeah, he was planning from the start to like make himself out to be the villain. Like, no, he truly held the ideals and truly wanted to kill all of humanity. It's just that he later on says that his brain is fried because past is present is future. So he knows that that's not going to happen. So like, yeah, he says here that the rumbling will kill 80% of humanity. And even though he's saying that, oh, now they won't be able to wage war. I don't think that that was his original plan or like what he truly wanted. I think that that's just him like now knowing the situation and drawing conclusions from it. Like, okay, I was able to kill 80%. At least that means something for Parodies.
yeah, and I think also he spoke on the fact that he didn't really, when he looked and saw the future, he wasn't able to see all the details. He was more so just able to see the end and what resulted of it. I think he says that later in this chapter, but yeah. And then also, I know that this may sound as a cop out, but a lot of people don't really give credence, I think is the word, to the fact that Aaron's mind is probably full of just conflicting ideals. Like he has the memories of all the past founding titans. He has so many things going on in his mind, and he makes a note later on about how like his mind is fried and like he can't really think straight anymore. But I don't think that us as readers can really understand like how impactful that is on his decisions because he ultimately has all these different ideas going on in his head and he can't think straight. So I think it explains why like some of the things he's saying are pretty misleading. Yeah, so the next big criticism I'm seeing is that this panel here isn't really the Chad Aaron we've been seeing for the past few chapters. I know a lot of people kind of grew fond of that Aaron and they liked how bold and how relentless he was, but I think at the end of the day, we can all agree that he didn't hate Mikasa. I mean, there were so many scenes where he's looking at her like lovingly, and so many times that he could have just like thrown her to the side when instead like he was there for her. I mean, the end of season 2 of the anime is him standing in front of her protecting her. I believe he also wrapped the scarf around her. You know, I mean, just the fact that we could believe that he didn't have feelings for Mikasa was just it just couldn't happen, you know? I think that this is completely justified. I think he's not a simp for this, you know? He's just pouring his actual feelings out. And I think maybe it was worded a little awkwardly. You know, I could give you guys that, but I don't think that this scene is out of character for him.
Yeah, I think people became very obsessed with the new Aaron after the time skip and wanted him to be this like cold-hearted guy who could really just go about freedom however he wanted and didn't have these connections to his friends. But first of all, like from a logical perspective, he couldn't like just totally change like that, right? Like, sure,
Yeah.
he's seen some stuff, but and enough stuff to make him like, genocide. But like he still has care for the people that have been in his life. Mikasa, who's been in his life for as long as everyone except for Armin.
Mhm.
And second, they've like been dropping hints for this type of stuff, right? Like we had the scene that was already animated where he's in the cart with John and them, and he says that he cares about them a lot.
Mhm.
Um, which yeah, that couldn't come out of nowhere. And then also there's the scenes where he's like walking through Marley and he like sort of cries to that boy because he's like, I know that I'm gonna kill you in the future. Um, we knew that he wasn't this like cold-hearted guy, and if he's gonna pour his heart out to some uh yeah random kid, he should do it to Mikasa as well, or he should at least harbor feelings that strong, right? Like he also asked Zeke, like his brother, like, oh, why do you think Mikasa feels that way? Like it's
Yeah.
clear that Aaron cares about Mikasa, and Mika, he even asked me Mikasa in that one scene, like, why do you like me? Like, it's so clear that he cares so much about her. Um, when you look at the whole series, at least, that I don't think that this was like out of character at all.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, people like to say that, like as you said, this is extremely out of character for Aaron. But if anything, this not happening would have been more out of character. Like the shift from, for the anime at least, season 3 to season 4. If we had just kept that Aaron throughout the whole series and like scenes like this hadn't happened, that would have been far more out of character for Aaron. Like there would have been no lead up or explanation as to why he changed so much. You know?
Mhm. So then I think this might be the place where people are saltiest. Um, Nothing really came of Historia's baby. Uh, I can understand some salt off of this, especially the way they played with us in terms of like Aaron being in the area 10 months
Yeah.
before. Um, to me, I think you put it best in saying that this is just bait, I guess. We were baited.
Hmm.
We got jebaited. And I can understand some frustration with that, but I also don't think that it destroys anything or like really changes much of the plot. Like they had given it some attention, right? Like some panels, but I think that people kind of blew out of proportion how much time was given to this because there was, a couple panels a few chapters ago showing her in labor, and
Hmm.
there was some uh like stuff that was already in the anime maybe, and then there was like maybe that conversation with Aaron and Historia. But I think that the baby was just sort of a way to write Historia out of this arc because she didn't really have a place in this arc, and possibly the baby being born at the same time as the battle is symbolic of the new nation or like the new Eldia. This baby was born never being able to turn into a Titan. um I don't think there's any issue with the direction Isayama took here.
Yeah, I agree with what you said about the symbolism. It seems like it would have been a disservice to Historia if they had ended up, after all this is said and done, her to have a child with someone who's now dead and her to just suffer that pain, you know? Her ending up having like a happy family, being happily with this man and having a child together kind of does more service for Aaron's grand sacrifice. I think Isayama probably did bait us. I mean he does that pretty often. I mean, looking back on all the evidence we had for Aaron being the dad, it was all pretty up in the air really, just conveniences and stuff like that. But yeah, I just think that this is a fine twist. I don't think that anyone should be too mad about this.
Yeah, yeah. And one final thing, I think people use as evidence that it was Aaron as the father, and I think we use evidence, that when they show the scene of her approaching the farmer, she's like looking sad. But now we
Mhm.
have the context that this was after a conversation with Aaron where Aaron said he was going to destroy like all of humanity.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I think that it's reasonable, everything now.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so then we get this sort of look into what things are like at Paradise now. And we see that they're still sort of in this super like nationalist military state, who's ready to fight, ready to go to war to win. And I think that a problem that people take with this is that the things haven't changed, right? Like we started off in Paradise was at war, and we end in Paradise is like still at war. And I think that there's multiple things to say about this. I think one thing is I think that that's a fine theme to come out with, right? That like there would never be a like overall solution to this violence. Yeah, that is in line with like the cruel world that Attack on Titan takes place in. Furthermore, Aaron did like somewhat grant peace for the people he cared about. Like he, to some degree, I guess, cared about Paradise, but he didn't care enough to like truly guarantee their safety. But we see later on that all of his other friends are, yeah, in like a boat. Uh, Seems like they have like a nice life. They don't live on Paradise anymore.
Hmm.
Um, and I also think that like we see here in this panel, in the bottom right panel, actually, where we see Sasha's family, uh, they are looking not too happy about what's going on here. So we see that like it's not all of Paradise that is in this super action military state. Like
Hmm.
not everybody is totally down with it.
Yeah, a lot of people like to say that like it undermines Aaron's goal. But I mean, this was Aaron's goal, was to destroy the end of the world. So I don't see how that could undermine his goal. And yeah, as you kind of said, it does kind of send a really real message that there will always be war as long as, there are other people. And the only way to like ensure that the whole world could be at peace is to destroy the rest of the world. So I think that sends a pretty good message there, a pretty
Yeah,
real message at least.
yeah,
Yeah, so with that being said, I think we covered most of the main complaints of the show. Ultimately, if you didn't like the ending, that's fine. But I personally thought it was a fine ending. I don't think it was perfect. I don't think it was amazing, but I think all of the complaints that I've heard at least could be chalked up to what we kind of talked about. But yeah.
yeah. And I think that there's like something to be said about the reaction of the Attack on Titan community to the ending, and just like online communities following series in general, especially one like this where it's so ripe for theories and stuff. So there's something beautiful in a community in that these people can collaborate and talk about these theories and come with these like very detailed posts about what might happen. But if you engage and are a part of these communities, then I do feel that in some way it limits your mindset in that now you know that like okay, the community thinks that these are the things that have to get wrapped up, and like the community like calls the worm this like cute name, and the community has these ship names for Aaron and Historia, and like uh I think that like the things that arise in the community just happen because like some people mention them,
Mhm.
and so you're letting like what a few people mention form essentially the canon for your entire like theory base and imagination with regards to Attack on Titan, or just any show you consume. And so I do feel that those who like weren't engaging in, our Titan folk, or any of these other subreddits or Twitter, like online communities regarding Attack on Titan, would probably enjoy the ending more because they weren't like so enthralled in this like canon that the communities have set forth about like what has to happen in the final chapter. But yeah, that's just my spiel about online communities and why I think that contributed to some of the disappointment regarding the final chapter.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think come next year, or yeah, when the anime kind of finally comes out, it'll be received completely differently. I still think some people may not like it, some people will like it, but at the end of the day, you form your own opinion and you enjoy the show as you want. I think one final message to send out is stop sending hate around. Don't slander Isayama because you didn't like the ending. Don't come for people who did like the ending. Let everyone have their own opinion. Everyone's entitled to it. But yeah, with that being said, feel free to discuss what you guys thought down below. Keep it, civil. But yeah, like, subscribe, and we'll catch you guys next week with something else, I guess.
Yeah, and thank you, Isayama, for this
Thank
series.
you.
Uh, I think we talked about this. I think it's still goated in my eyes. I
Yeah.
don't think that this ending had anything to do to change that for me.
Yeah, I think Attack on Titan was a complete masterpiece, and I loved all of it.